Hi Fright fans, welcome back to my channel. A terrifying sea monster shows up stranded on the shore, but as they study it, it reveals strange secrets from within. In today's video, we'll recap more tales from Junji. We will begin our journey with the events of the tale, The Thing That Drifted Ashore. A large sea creature suddenly appears on the shore in a tiny seaside town, shocking the locals. In a few hours, a large number of people gather around the location with the sole purpose of getting a better look at the creature. However, everyone quickly learns that this is a strange creature that has never been seen before. The species in question had a dreadful appearance, which was made even more unsettling by its advanced state of decomposition. A group of scientists also visited the location to examine the monster and get more data. A woman faints in the midst of commotion but is swiftly assisted by a male who was also close. The young man leads her to a location that is farther away and surmises that she passed out due to the creature's foul odor. Mia responds that she just despises the ocean. She reveals to him that her fiancé died in a shipwreck off the coast of Izu 7 years ago. Before he could say anything to comfort her, they both saw an odd movement in the group. The animal contains many human bodies in its belly. According to the scientists who were on the scene, who remarked that some of the animal's components were already in a critical state of decomposition, they decided to cut out the monster's intestines to remove what first appeared to be human beings. When one of the researchers remarks that the creature's victims don't seem to have been digested, a great number of bodies are thrown out while they do this. The scientists are surprised when these creatures start to move and let out frightful noises, despite how horrifying they all appear to be. Mie approaches the gathering and is able to spot her deceased fiancé among the several bodies. She makes an effort to speak with him, but is unsuccessful. According to the scientist, there was no chance that it was the girl's fiancé. If he had passed away 7 months earlier, the animal would have no doubt digested him by now. The researchers put out the hypothesis that those people had evolved into parasites of the beast. This most likely happened when they began consuming the substances found inside the monsters as food. To make matters worse, the bodies start to move independently and cluster together as they creep up the beach. People's only guess at this point is that the undiscovered species dwells in the ocean's depths where even sunlight cannot penetrate. Only humans are ingested by the beast, who makes them its lifelong host. Now we move on to our second and last tale of today's video, titled Intruder in a Macabre House. A young man buries a deceased person's bodies who resembles him in appearance. Kamiyama converses with his friends in the school's library. Two pause discussing a possible paranormal occurrence. He explains that he feels like a strange person is watching him, considers it to be the presence from another dimension. Their pals attempt to talk about what may be occurring. According to Kamiyama, there is a book in the library which has more information on this subject. As the group moves about, they realize that the questioned book was with Ashore. The young man had always struck Kamiyama as being exceedingly odd. He never spoke to anyone and was constantly by himself. The group nevertheless approaches the young man. This brings up the subject of parallel dimensions. Oshikiri expresses curiosity and even agrees to an invitation to go to a cafeteria with the group in order to continue talking about the issue. The young man confesses to the group that he can always hear footsteps, despite the fact that he lives alone in his home. Kamiyama and his colleagues talk about the potential of ghosts or even disembodied souls. They are intrigued by Oshikiri's story and inquire as to whether they can visit his home to investigate the enigmatic footsteps. Finally, the young man concurs and drives the crowd to his house. The area is surrounded by a large forest, and there is a substantial wall surrounding every home. The students then go inside the residence and start bringing up alternate dimensions more frequently. When asked about the footsteps, Oshikiri responds that he sometimes hears it during the day and sometimes at night. Kamiyama claims to have a strong sense of the presence of a person from another planet. He determines that the invader came from a certain dimension, who is also responsible of the weird footsteps. The group puts up a number of theories, and in the end, they concur that there is a paranormal element there. Oshikiri is thanked by Kamiyama and his classmates for allowing them to investigate the house. The youths shake hands to start a new friendship, but the wall clock started to chime. Then footsteps can be heard throughout the home shortly after. The kids are intrigued by this, and they investigate the matter right away. There are sounds of footsteps in the hallway, followed by the sound of the door slamming. The team heads straight to the spot to get a peek at something, but they see no strange activity. As they return to their starting point, Watanabe observes something strange through the window and implores his colleague to look as well. the gang becomes aware that there is a second Oshikiri variation burying another person in the backyard. According to Kamiyama, his friend's parallel existence is perhaps carried out a crime in other realm, and most likely dispose of the body in this universe to cover up the crime's evidence. This has infuriated Oshikiri, who begins screaming at his alternate version. His replica, meanwhile, simply stands by and chuckles in his face. Then, right in front of everyone, he vanishes. A little while later, the group visits the backyard in search of additional hints. Kamiyama advises his pal not to feel bad about what had transpired. After all, it was his other version responsible for that heinous crime. Kuzumi informs his classmate. They all know now that Kamiyama's body was the one that was being buried. The young man attempts to maintain control of this unusual scenario and reiterates that Oshikiri is not to blame for this. The students then understand that there are additional burials in the location, which after being opened, they realize that Kuzumi and Watanabe were also laid to rest. They don't know what drove Oshikiri from other dimension to carry out these crimes, so they choose to seal the graves once more and not to discuss it. Oshikiri's copy followed only by observing and listening to the students' movements. So what did you think of this anime? Leave it in the comments below, and if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more anime recaps.